Ready to learn, I hope. So we'll start out with prayer. Is there a particular prayer request that we need to be mindful of here and as we go throughout our week? Yeah, sorry. Yeah, so it's my far periphery, not so great, I guess.
My friend Kelly, they just found out that her dad's prostate cancer came back and it's considered stage 4.
Oof.
And it's in his lungs. So he can just pray for them. It's the Bitrucker Rhodes family.
Rhodes family. Reoccurrence of cancer that was prostate. Now it's, you say in the lungs? Is that what you said? Anybody else? Yep. A couple of deaths last week. Yeah, we can remember those families, Hydrickson and the Amoses, for that. Jane.
Sue West, she's a member of the church up in Hiawassee. Her husband was in the hospital at Piedmont 2 weeks ago for a car accident. Ended up getting to stay for about 6 days.
Oh boy.
Sent him to the hospital back up in Union County. He went home for a couple of days now. They've had to emergency transport him back down to Piedmont again. He just went in for a stent and it's been really complicated. So he's not a member of the church.
But Sue West.
The West family.
The West family, yeah. It's hard things and procedures. I found procedures have complications sometimes. I don't know. Unexpected ones that, get you to have that fun, like extra stays or whatever from that. Yeah.
I think we should pray for the people that are losing their homes with all these fires out west.
Yeah. Fires have a lot of devastation on people from that. Yeah. Pray for the ones that are losing their homes from that. Marshall. Marshall's daughter, Julie, has 4 herniated discs, if you didn't hear that. So let's be mindful of her as well. Let us bow. Dear Heavenly Father, we are always grateful for this opportunity that we have individually and corporately to speak with you. We know that you're listening, and we know more importantly that you answer prayer. We want to start by just being grateful for everything you provide for us this beautiful day, the health to the level that we have to be able to all be here today, and all the things you've blessed us with in this life, and most importantly what you've blessed us with and the promise of what is to come in the next life. We ask that you be with those that are not able to be here and not able to be with their families, those that we are aware of that are on our prayer list, some of which we have mentioned today, and those that are associated with members here, their families, or friends, or members elsewhere that we're aware of, that we mentioned this morning, and that we may know of otherwise, that need your healing, comforting, and strengthening hand. And always we want to be sure that we are in any way that we can be your servants and your execution of bringing that comfort and strength in many cases to people, and help us to see those opportunities and to seize them. Be with us this morning as we study your word in this class and as we go on through worship later, that we are focused on gaining as much from it as possible, from listening intently and through thinking it through and figuring out what we can apply to our lives, that we can be better Christians and more like what you would like us to be, and to be the example in this world that you would have. We pray this all in your Son's name. Amen. So, here I am again. Well, that's the subject, not I am too, but the deal. Quick review. We've talked about Abraham and Isaac, that God tested Abraham. We talked about Jacob and Esau, where God used their tendencies to take and perform his plan. We talked about Joseph and Jacob, that there was a plan for us, there's a plan for them, there's a plan for us from that. Moses started out as not a very committed volunteer, very reluctant, doubtful, and yet he became a very strong messenger for God, ultimately from that. We saw Caleb, who said it a little differently because he claimed the promised land that he'd been given. He was willing to say, I'll be able to take it and do what God wants to conquer the land from that. And we talked about Samuel for a couple of weeks. First, obedience to Eli, and obedience to God, even in difficult situations, and then daring for any charges to be applied against him, any reason that they now were going to have a king that was going to fall short of their needs sometimes, and he'd warned them about that. This week we're going to talk about, let's talk about last week we talked about Jonathan's armor bearer. He was a person who fully trusted in Jonathan. He was not just assigned a job and just took it as his boss. He really trusted his Lord basically from that, Jonathan. And he was convinced that Jonathan was backed by God. If Jonathan said something, God was going to do it. And so when Jonathan says God can do something by few or by many, even though there was just the two of them taking on a garrison, he was willing to be committed, and committed to the point that it could likely have cost him his life. But he believed that Jonathan and God knew what they were doing from that. This week we're going to talk about a couple of different people. We're going to talk about Ahimelech and Saul's death messenger. Obviously doesn't have a name. And was he really a messenger of Saul's death? Well, come on. These are two cases where maybe if they all had to do over again, maybe they didn't want to say, here I am. We'll see. So let's see what's happened with David and Saul. Let's kind of catch ourselves up from where we were with before. We saw David and Saul a little bit when we were talking about Jonathan. We talked about the fact that Saul had fallen short of God's expectation. He had sinned a couple of different ways from that, done things he wasn't supposed to. What else has happened before we're going to pick up the story? Well, Samuel has anointed David as the next king. I sometimes think we don't really realize how early in all the story that happens. You know, that David knows that before he even gets in any connection with Saul himself. He knows that all along the way. We don't know when Saul is aware. We don't know if Saul ever is really aware that he was actually anointed from that. He knows that it's likely that that's going to be who the king is. He can see the popularity. He can see that God's behind him. He can see all those things, but we don't know for certain that he ever knew that Samuel had officially anointed David as the next king. After that, it's a situation where David becomes his soother. He's troubled, Saul, that is, and in his spirit. And they find that, send out for somebody who can play the lyre and sing stuff to where it can soothe his spirit and calm him down. And David is the one selected to do that. And after that, of course, we have the famous situation where David kills Goliath. He has the courage and the belief again in God that he can go out and do that. Even though all the soldiers and Saul himself are just listening to Goliath and the Philistines ridicule them and not doing anything about it, David jumps into the fray and gets it. Of course, there's some downside from that because David is then proclaimed by the people to be greater than Saul, which does not make Saul very happy. Saul is one of those people who is very insecure. He's very insecure about whether people like him, whether he's going to be successful. He doesn't like to do that, and he's going to make it be that way for his own gratification, his own needs for that. So Saul is very jealous when he hears those kind of things. It starts that whole process. Even though David is important to him as a soother, he's important because he helped him to defeat the Philistines and take on Goliath, he's still very jealous from that. And yet, his son Jonathan, that we talked about in his armor bearer, him and David are besties. They're BFFs in today's lingo from that. They're best friends forever. And they're a very close bond. There's a tremendous amount of love there between the two of them, even though Jonathan's dad is not feeling the same for David from that. And so Jonathan, of course, like we all do, wants to think better of his dad. Certainly Dad's not like that. He knows all the things you've done, David. This is the way it's going to be. We're all good with that. And so we get to a point where, David knows that where Saul is coming from that. And he tells Jonathan, says, look, Saul is after me. He's going to kill me. And Jonathan's like, oh, no, I'd know that. Dad would tell me if that was the case. If that's really how he felt about you, I'd know. Well, no, that's not the way it is. So how are we going to figure this out? Well, I've got a plan. There's this feast. I'm supposed to be right there in his presence as one of his key people. For that feast, I'm not going to show up. You tell him that you've approved me to go and let's see how your dad operates. What is his reaction to all that? Now, if it's a positive reaction, come and meet me out in the field. Jonathan's plan, I'll meet you out in the field and tell you everything's okay. If it's not, I've got this plan. I'm going to go out, I'll shoot some arrows with a young boy with me, and I'll indicate by what I say for the boy to go and get the arrows that you're in trouble. I don't know why they went so elaborate, because at the end of it, when they do get it all finished, they get together, just the two of them, and discuss it. So I don't know why they had to have an elaborate plan about the arrows and all that business, but they did. So that's kind of where we're going to pick up now. And we're going to, things that are, I lost some stuff out of it, I guess. Something happened to that. Anyway, I lost a page in there. So we'll pick up here in verse 30. This is when Jonathan, pick it up here, and Jonathan has already told him, he's missed the first day of the festival, and Saul just kind of ignores it. And then the second day comes up, and Saul now asks, well, why isn't he here? And Jonathan says, well, he asked me if he could skip it because it's important he go to something else at home with his family, and I told him it was okay to go. Now we get the reaction of it. Then Saul's anger was aroused against Jonathan, and he said to him, you son of a perverse, rebellious woman, do I not know that you have chosen the son of Jesse to your own shame and to the shame of your mother's nakedness? For as long as the son of Jesse lives on the earth, you shall not be established, nor your kingdom. Like I say, Saul knows that David's going to take it over. Whether he knows he's been anointed to do that, it's very clear to him God's behind him, and that's the end that's going to come from that. Therefore, Jonathan clearly is the one expected to inherit it, as obviously the oldest son. You're not going to get it. Now, therefore, send and bring him to me, for he shall surely die. I think Saul made it very clear what he was going to do now. There's no question in Jonathan's mind what's going to do it. But Jonathan's not satisfied with that. And Jonathan answered Saul his father and said to him, why should he be killed? What has he done? Then Saul does what? He cast a spear at Jonathan to kill him. He didn't send it over there just as a mad, I'm going to throw it over there and get your attention. I'm not just aggravated and randomly throwing something. He threw it in a full attempt to kill his eldest son. That's how angry he was. How much he was concerned about David taking over his kingdom. Now, guess what? Jonathan doesn't have any choice. By which Jonathan knew that it was determined by his father to kill David. There's no question now. Dad's tried to kill me. Dad says he wants to kill him. I can't argue this anymore. I can't think anything more positive and try to make up that my dad is not the man that David said he was. It's clear that I was wrong, and unfortunately, my close friend David was right in this case. So he goes out to shoot from that, and the lad didn't know anything. Only Jonathan and David knew of the matter. Then Jonathan gave his weapons to his lad and said to him, go carry them to the city. Well, for some reason, some of my slides are just not showing up. Something I did to him makes them hide. Let me see if I can fill in the gaps. Don't know what's up with that. Worked for me at home. But isn't that the way it works always when you're doing things like that? In front of people, you can't read them. So let me see if I can pick that up instead of, well, actually, they seem to have kind of disappeared from me as well. So I don't know what happened to those pages. So I seem to have lost them as well. Not a problem with that stuff. So anyway, he shoots the arrows. He tells the boy that they're beyond him. The signal is there from that. The lad didn't know why he was doing it. Kind of was confused. Why is Jonathan telling me stuff? But Jonathan is, after all, as far as the world knows, for the most part, he's the heir to the kingdom. He's the prince, so to speak, from that. So he doesn't know what's going on. So now Jonathan can give his weapons to the lad and said to him, go carry them to the city. And like I said, even though they'd had this elaborate thing of communicating, once the young boy leaves, guess what? David rose from a place toward the south and fell in his face to the ground and bowed down 3 times. And they kissed one another. And they wept together. But David more so. David knew this meant he was going to have to leave. He was the one that was going to have to go on the run. And he knew, I think, partially how hard it had to be on Jonathan, how much love there was between them, and yet Jonathan's father was wanting to kill Jonathan's best friend from that. Then Jonathan said to David, go in peace, since we have both sworn in the name of the Lord, saying, may the Lord be between me, you and me, and between your descendants and my descendants forever. And so he arose and departed, and Jonathan did what? He went into the city. He went back home, and David starts his sojourn to stay out of the clutches of Saul from that. So, whoops, there's the chapter. See, I told you I had those slides in there. How they got moved to there, I don't know. But anyway. So, David's gone away. Now he's got to seek supplies. Interestingly enough, he's done nothing. He knows what the outcome's going to be. He knows that Jonathan's going to come back, but he doesn't do much to prepare for the fact he's going to be on the run. He's done nothing for food, and he's done nothing for any weapons from that. And so he's got to find a way to fill those in. So he's got to go and seek some supplies. So where does he go? He goes to where the ark is, where the chief priest is from that. So we pick it up in 1 Samuel 21. Now David came to Nob, to Elimelech the priest. And Elimelech was afraid when he met David. That seems like an odd reaction. David's here. A priest is afraid of him. Why? Well, and he said to him, "Why are you alone and no one is with you?" It's unique. This isn't the way I expect to see David. Who's David? David is the right hand, basically, of Saul. He doesn't have his normal attendants with him. He has some servants maybe, but he doesn't have a normal royal kind of entourage around him from that. He's the son-in-law of the king, not just his close confidant, and yet David's kind of here on his own. And I know him and Saul haven't been really getting along very well. The rumors have gotten around to some extent, so I'm a little concerned about why you're here. What is it that you want from that? So David said to Elimelech the priest, "The king has ordered me on some business and said to me, 'Do not let anyone know anything about the business on which I send you or what I have commanded you.'" David, man after God's own heart, lying profusely. Not even close to the truth. Not even an indication of that. He's wanting to have Elimelech not tell about the fact that he's there, but he gives him a false reason for it. The king said don't do that. And I'm here and without a bunch of people and all that because it's off on this, this important mission that I've been set on. I can't tell you what it's about. Secret. Top secret mission that I've been set on by the king. But now, and I've gone ahead and why I don't have my people with me, and I have directed my young men to such and such a place. So that's why they're not with me. I know you're really weird about why they're not with me. You expect me to have this little entourage. Send them on somewhere else already. Trust me, this is what's going on. Curious, why did David not tell him the truth? What was the purpose? Do you think that Ahimelech wouldn't have helped him if he'd have known what it really was the case? Ahimelech most likely had heard from Samuel that David had been anointed king. And I think he wanted to try to save him from that. He wanted him to have deniability, to be able to say if he was ever asked from that, "I didn't know what's going on. This is what David told me. How did I know it wasn't the truth?" I think maybe David thought he was going to save him. Picking up verse 3. "Now, therefore, what do you have on hand?" He's at the tabernacle, and he's asking, "What do you have on hand?" Like it's a store. All right? "Give me 5 loaves of bread in my hand or whatever can be found." Got to pick up some staples here for us to go on, the people that are with me, to be able to subside or assist going forward. And the priest answered David and said, "There is no common bread on hand." There's no bread that just normal people can eat. But there is holy bread. We've got the show bread, the bread that would be in there on the show table, would have been, sort of offered to God, that would be there for a certain time and then taken away from that. We've got that bread. And then he adds a condition that we don't find anywhere in the Bible as to how somebody can take of that bread besides the priest. He says, "If the young men have at least kept themselves from women, I can let them have it, even though it's supposed to be just for the priests, if the young men that are with you haven't been with women." Then David answered the priest and said to him, "Truly, women have been kept from us about 3 days since I came out." Don't know whether that's true or not. Don't know. That might be still truth, and it may be still part of his story. And the vessels of these young men are holy, and the bread is, in fact, common, even though it was sanctified in the vessel this day. They're about to switch out the showbread. The showbread was there, it's taken out, and then the priest could normally eat it from that. But it sat on the show table for a certain period of time. It is now the right day for it to be taken away. So he's saying, look, it's not special now, it's not holy now because it's actually being traded out for new bread. And so it should be available for us to have from that. So the priest gave him the holy bread, for there was no bread there but the showbread which had been taken from before the Lord in order to put hot bread in its place on the day when it was taken away. Now this comes up later in the New Testament, a whole point being made about the fact that David ate of that holy bread and the men that were with him from that. Only time we have an instance of anybody besides the priest partaking of it, and no indication of whether that's right or wrong from that. Now a certain man, of the servants of Saul was there that day, detained before the Lord. And his name was Doeg, an Edomite, the chief of the herdsmen who belonged to Saul. So this guy is just out there, he herds things around. He's in charge of taking care of the animals. But he just happens to be in Nob at that particular time and in the temple when all this is going down. So he's there to hear what's going on. And David said to Ahimelech, "Is there not here on hand a spear or a sword?" Did David ask that without knowing the answer to it? I don't think he did that without knowing the answer. What's the answer to that? Well, he goes on to say, "For I have brought neither my sword nor my weapons with me, because the king's business required haste." I know that shocks you that I don't have them with me, but it was important that I get going, so I left them behind. And so the priest said, "What's there?" "The sword of Goliath the Philistine." Yeah, David didn't know that was there. He had no idea what happened to that after he'd used it. I think David knew what was there. I think David went to get that. That was one of the main reasons that he went to Ahimelech. He says, "Whom you killed in the valley of Elah, there it is, wrapped in a cloth behind the ephod. If you will take that, take it, for there is no other except that one here." And David said, "There is none like it. Give it to me." This is a special weapon. Now, he'd been able to do that. He wasn't able to wear Saul's armor successfully when he met up with Goliath. And certainly Goliath's weapons were very challenging for the size of it, but David's older now, capable, and he had used that weapon already to kill somebody, Goliath. While he knocked him down with the stone, he cut off his head with Goliath's own sword. And so now he's got a weapon. He's got the sword. And for all the concerns of Ahimelech, he has to take David at his word. He's doing this because he's on a mission. You know, it's kind of like the Blues Brothers, a mission from God. He's on a mission from the king. But he isn't really from that. So unfortunately, Saul's not very happy. He knows that David's on the run, and he's looking for somebody to take it out on. He's tried to do that with Jonathan, but he doesn't really know that Jonathan's told David what he did out there. He doesn't know about the little ruse about shooting the arrows and all that business from it. And for whatever reason, while at one point Jonathan offered him his stuff to use, he doesn't take Jonathan's weapons or anything like that. There's no evidence that he knows about it, so now he's still looking for it. He's mad, and he's looking for somebody. So we pick it up in 1 Samuel 24, starting verse 6. When Saul heard that David and the men who were with him had been discovered, now Saul was staying in Gibeah under a tamarisk tree in Ramah with his spear in his hand and all his servants standing about him. He is in a nasty mood. That's why he's got the spear. He's ready to hurl it at somebody. You hurled it at Jonathan. Let's hurl it at somebody else. Then Saul said to his servants who stood about him, "Hear now, you Benjaminites. Will the son of Jesse give every one of you fields and vineyards and make you all captains of thousands and captains of hundreds? Look, will he do what I've done for you? Huh? I've taken care of you. I've given you fields and vineyards. I've made you captains. I've made you in charge of all these people from that. Now, how far does he think this has gone?" He goes, "All of you have conspired against me," as though all of them had anything to do with what David did. That's the way Saul did in his paranoia. Everybody's against me. Everybody's trying to do me in. My kingdom's going to be gone soon from that. "And there is no one who reveals to me that my son has made a covenant with the son of Jesse." He knows there's that relationship between them. He knows it from what happened at that meal when he took and threw his spear at him. "And there is not one of you who is sorry for me." He feels sorry for me, the king. "I've had a hard life there after me. It's terrible. I feel bad for me, the king. "Or reveals to me that my son has stirred up my servant against me to lie in wait as it is this day." Who did it? Well, David didn't come up with it. My son, Jonathan. He's got him going off of that. Fool kid. He's not going to have the kingdom because of that. Then answered Doeg, the Edomite. Remember him? He was there at the temple when David was there. He now sees an opportunity. Who was set over the servants of Saul. We heard it before. He was over the herd. He was the herdsman, head herdsman. So of those servants anyway. And he said, "I saw the son of Jesse go into Nob to Ahimelech, the son of Etib. I saw him go over there. I saw him. He went to the high priest. over there a Nob from that. And he inquired of the Lord for him, gave him provisions, and gave him the sword of Goliath the Philistines. Is all that true? We have no record, nor does Ahimelech say that that happened where he inquired of the Lord for him. The other two, yeah. The other two, he gave him some provisions. He gave him the showbread. Did he give him the sword of Goliath? Yes, he did. Did he inquire of God as to what to do for David or anything about that? No, he did not. But it sounds good, and it'll irritate Saul that much more, and I'm going to further ingratiate myself, dogs, thanks, with him. So, the king angry, what does he do? So the king sent to call Ahimelech the priest, the son of Ahitub, and all his father's house, the priests who were Nob, and they all came to the king. And Saul said, "Hear now, son of Ahitub." And he answered, "Here I am, my lord." All right? He answers his king. He's under his rule. He answers him. He knows he's mad. I'm sure he can tell that. He's got a good idea. He's heard by now why, to some extent. He's not now oblivious to what has gone on from that. And so he says from it, and then Saul said to him, "Why have you conspired against me?" It's personal, always personal with Saul. It's all about him. "You and the son of Jesse, in that you have given him bread and a sword, and have inquired of God for him that he should rise against me to lie in wait, as it is this day." He's bought into everything that Doeg said. These are facts because Doeg said it. He's really not going to want to listen, is he? He's not open-minded at all for what response Ahimelech will have for him. So, who asked a question? Paul spoke to get Ahimelech's attention. He didn't really ask a question. He just called out his name to make sure he got his attention. Ahimelech acknowledged his king's call. That was the right thing to do, to show him respect for who he was from that. But Saul wants to do what? He wants to charge Ahimelech with aiding David's claimed treason, and he's looking to take out his anger and vengeance on somebody. And here's somebody right in front of him that he believes is a part of that conspiracy. He's been able to help arm and feed David. Clearly, he's guilty. So what's the deal? So Ahimelech answered the king and said, "And who among all your servants is as faithful as David?" You're going to question him? Who's done more for you? Who killed all those people out there? Who's been your guy to go to? Who's soothed your heart? Who did you give your daughter to? Who is more faithful than him? Who is the king's son-in-law? Who goes at your bidding, goes and does what you want, and is honorable in your house? Come on, this is who you're going to charge with all this stuff and then put me into? Did I then begin to inquire of God from him? That's the big charge. Did I do anything special because of my role as high priest and having the ephod? And he says, "Far be it from me. Let not the king impute anything to his servant or to any of the house of my father." He indicates he did not inquire of God on behalf of David. Don't be trying to charge us with something that did not happen. And for the whole thing, what does he want to do for the response of conspiring with David? "For your servant knew nothing of all this, little or much." I didn't know what was going on. I bought what David told me. And David didn't say he was running from you. He didn't say he was conspiring to kill you. He didn't say any of that. He said he was on a mission from you. And I know not a little bit of this story you're telling me, nor a lot of that story from you. And the king, angered by those responses, I'm sure, said, "You shall surely die, Elimelech, you and all your father's house." Here he is talking to God's priests, head priest, high priest that way. You're going to die. I have it in mind. I can kill the priests. I'm above that. I'm the king. I can do whatever I want to do from that. Then the king said to the guards who stood about him, "Turn and kill the priests of the Lord, because their hand also is with David. I want more retribution." They're all standing with him. They represent it all. I want all the priests killed. Because they knew when he fled and did not tell it to me. Well, they did know he was gone. They didn't necessarily know that Saul wanted to know about that. But the servants of the king would not lift their hands to strike the priests of the Lord. They knew better than to try to kill those that were the ones representing God and communicating and doing things in relationship to God in the temple. They didn't want anything to do with what Saul said. No matter whether he was king or not, this is a command I'm not going to do. That's when it's You know, that division goes from obedience to government and what's against God's will. And they made that call. We're not going to do it. Not going to do it. Oh, but there's somebody there. And the king said to Doeg, you turn and kill the priests. Not even a killer. He was a herdsman. But oh boy, he wants to get even closer in relationship to Saul and ingratiated. So Doeg the Edomite turned and struck the priests and killed on that day 85 men who wore a linen ephod. 85 priests he killed. Also Nob, the city of the priests that David went to, he struck with the edge of the sword, both men and women, children and nursing infants, oxen and donkeys and sheep with the edge of the sword. Now one of the sons of Elimelech, the son of Ahitub, named Abiathar, escaped and fled after David. And Abiathar told David that Saul had killed the Lord's priest. So David said to Abiathar, I knew that day when Doeg the Edomite was there that he would surely tell Saul, I have caused the death of all. Why? Because he lied to him from that? No, I think whatever he did, he was going to kill him. I think David tried to save Elimelech by telling him a story instead of the truth from that. But either way, Saul was going to kill him. But Ahimelech was totally innocent. There's nothing to say that Ahimelech did wrong other than potentially give him the showbread. And we don't know that that was necessarily wrong. But David knows I'm the reason for it. Because I went there and I got my bread from him and I got Goliath's sword. That's why everybody got killed. So what does he say to the son? Stay with me. Do not fear. For he who seeks my life seeks your life, but with me you shall be safe. David believes that, although he struggles with that along the way because he believes that God is with him. Not sure if Ahimelech was happy that he said, here I am, but he had really no choice. But it cost him his life, ultimately. We're moving forward. We've got the death of Saul. 1 Samuel 31, verses 1 through 7. Now the Philistines fought against Israel. So things have gone on. Saul is chased after David. David's twice had an opportunity to kill Saul and won't do it because he is the anointed of God. But Saul's kingdom is going to come to an end. So the men of Israel fled from before the Philistines and fell slain on Mount Gilboa. Then the Philistines followed hard after Saul and his sons. They're going to take out the leadership. And the Philistines killed Jonathan, Abinadab, and Malchishua, Saul's sons. The battle became fierce against Saul. The archers hit him, and he was severely wounded by the archers. He's fatally hit. Then Saul said to his armor-bearer, he has one just like Jonathan did, draw your sword and thrust me through with it. Kill me. Why? Lest these uncircumcised men come and thrust me through and abuse me, mutilate me, take advantage, put me out there as example to everybody from that, mock me. But his armor bearer would not, for he was greatly afraid. Probably felt somewhat the same as David did. This is God's anointed. This is our first king ever. Yeah, I'm going to kill him. I want to have that credit on my resume. And what did you do? I see you were Saul's armor bearer. And, oh, I see here you killed him. That was very good. Yeah, we'll hire you for the next job. I want you to be my guy. But he wouldn't do it. So what happened? Therefore, Saul took a sword and fell on it. He committed suicide rather than to allow the Philistines to kill him. Now, they may still mutilate him, and they could have done that, but he at least didn't allow them the satisfaction of actually being the ones to finally kill him. And when the armor bearer saw that Saul was dead, he also fell on his sword and died with him. Whether it was out of sympathy, was fear that people would believe he hadn't prevented it from happening, I don't know what his motivation was, but he went ahead and did that. There is one example of an armor bearer killing the person he carried the armor for. You can look that up in Judges. Wasn't a very nice man anyway, and he just wanted to get killed because he didn't want people to say a woman killed him. But this one didn't do it. So Saul, his 3 sons, his armor bearer, and all his men died together that same day. And when the men of Israel were on the other side of the valley, and those who were on the other side of the Jordan saw that the men of Israel had fled, and that Saul and his sons were dead, they forsook the cities and fled, and the Philistines came and dwelt in them. They just gave up, ran away. We don't got leadership anymore. We don't know what's going to happen to us. Let's run away, and the Philistines took over everything. That'd be an interesting story in the way that it ends, but that's not the way the whole thing ends. we pick up in 2 Samuel, and somebody is going to come and is going to explain Saul's death and bring some stuff to David and going to regret that he ever did it. Being 2 Samuel 1, starting verse 1. And it came to pass after the death of Saul, when David had returned from the slaughter of the Amalekites, and David had stayed 2 days in Ziklag, on the third day, behold, it happened that a man came from Saul's camp. I don't know what David knew about what had happened and all the defeats from that. Doesn't seem like he knew anything. He'd been busy fighting his own battles from that point. He's just come back from them. Here's this guy shows up. This guy's got his clothes, with his clothes torn and dust on his head. And so it was when he came to David that he fell to the ground and prostrated himself. By this time, it's very well known. David is the heir to the kingdom. They've known that for a while. So he's going to give him credit, leader of that. And David said to him, "Where have you come from?" So he said to him, "I have escaped from the camp of Israel." Then David said to him, "How did the matter go? Tell me about it. How did things go? I haven't heard the details. You tell me the details from that. Please tell me." And he answered, "The people have fled from the battle. Many of the people are fallen and dead, and Saul and Jonathan his son are dead also." Notice he didn't say Saul and his sons. He just picked out the one, because everybody knew, again, that David and Saul and Jonathan were besties. Your BFF is dead, and his dad, who you probably like the fact his dad's dead, but you probably don't like the fact that Jonathan's dead. But I'm going to report both those things and ignore the fact of the other two sons being dead. You probably don't care about that. So David said to the young man who told him, "How do you know that Saul and Jonathan his son are dead? How do you really know this? Is this just one of those rumors that goes around that isn't really true? They're just hurt, or they're hiding, or whatever. How do you know that actually that's the way it turned out?" Then the young man who told him said, "As I happened to be on Mount Gilboa, there was Saul leaning on his spear. And indeed, the chariots and horsemen followed hard after him." That's the Philistines are coming after him. "Now when he looked behind him, he saw me and called to me. And I answered, 'Here I am.' And he said to me, 'Who are you?' So I answered him, 'I am an Amalekite.'" Who was it David just went and fought with? Oh, that's right, the Amalekites. "And he said to me again, 'Please stand over me and kill me. For anguish has come upon me, but my life still remains in me.'" Well, this is a different story. He's not the armor bearer. He doesn't even claim to be the armor bearer, who all, by the way, is dead anyway. But he claims that Saul's asked him to kill him. So, who was the question? Saul, apparently, according to the story, spoke to get the Amalekites' attention. The Amalekite acknowledged Saul's call. He was with them, supposedly. So he was somewhat of a servant in that, and he recognized Saul as king. And Saul wanted, apparently, according to the story, have the Amalekite kill him because he was in such pain. So what happened? "So I stood over him and killed him. He asked me to. I did it. Because I was sure he could not live after he's fallen. I did this." This was euthanasia. He was going to die anyway. He was going to suffer. I would have put him out of his suffering. I went ahead and killed him from that. "And I took the crown that was on his head and the bracelet that was on his arm, and I brought them here to my Lord." Hey, some truth. He clearly has those things. The rest of it may not be true, but that part's true. "Therefore David took hold of his own clothes and tore them, and so did all the men who were with him. And they mourned and wept and fasted until evening for Saul and for Jonathan his son, for the people of the Lord and for the house of Israel, because they had fallen by the sword." This is horrible news. At the end of the day, it's still horrible news. Not all true, but all horrible. And so they take a chance to mourn, and David doesn't react immediately to the news otherwise that he's gotten from the Amalekite. He first shows due respect to his friend and to his king, having passed away. Now let's compare the two death stories. Who did Saul ask to kill him? Well, in reality, Saul's armor bearer. That's who he asked to kill him. The lie, the Amalekite, who later came to see David. Why did Saul want to be killed? The reality said he wanted to avoid being killed and mutilated by the Philistines. According to the lie, he was just in too much pain. Put me out of my misery. I can't take it anymore. Was that request fulfilled? In reality, nope. Armor bearer didn't kill him. Saul killed himself in that. In the lie, yes, the Amalekite killed him. What happened to the one Saul asked? In reality, the armor bearer killed himself when he saw Saul was dead. In the other case, he took Saul's symbols of kingship, his crown and his bracelet, and he went to David. Now, we all know why he went to David. He expected to get rewarded. He expected to get honor. He expected to get great things. Your enemy's dead. You're now the king. Yay, yay, yay. And I'm the one that, helped that along. And I did it for nice things. I wasn't trying to be brutal about it. I really took him out of his misery anyway. And now you're going to have these things and be king from that. I expect some reward for this. Even though I really am just a looter. That's what I did. I went on the battlefield. Happened to bump on what seemed to be a great thing at the time, finding Saul from that. But how did it go? Then David said to the young man who had told him, "Where are you from?" Like he'd forgotten. And he answered, "I am the son of an alien, an Amalekite." Again, that's who he'd just been out fighting anyway. So David said to him, "How was it that you were not afraid to put forth your hand to destroy the Lord's anointed?" Twice David had that opportunity, even as the next anointed of God, to be able to do that and make it an action, and he would not reach forth his hand. Here, an alien felt it that he had the capability of doing for it, killing it. David doesn't know he didn't do it. Is he going to help the Amalekite if he says, "Well, that part I made up, okay? I really didn't kill Saul. He was dead when I found him. I took his stuff and brought it, though." I don't know if he tried to do that or not. He didn't have much of an opportunity, because then David called one of his young men and said, "Go near and execute him." And he struck him so that he died. So David said to him, to his body, "Your blood is on your own hand, for your own mouth has testified against you, saying, 'I have killed the Lord's anointed.'" It doesn't really matter whether you did it or didn't do it. It's what you claim to do. And that shows no respect for God as the one who anointed him king, or for the king that you were somewhat under. There's one person who doesn't want to admit, who would like to take back and say, "I said, here I am." Because he didn't even say it, only in the story. He wasn't there when Saul died. And so it ultimately comes about that saying he did say, "Here I am," results in his own death, because he went and said he carried forth what Saul had asked of his armor bearer to do, and what Saul had actually done for himself. Both cases of "here I am" this week, not great circumstances, not great turnout. So Elimelech obediently told Saul, "Yep, I'm here. I'm ready to hear your charges from it." And Saul was going to hear nothing of it. In the case of the Amalekite, I claim to have said, "Here I am" to Saul, and went ahead and did what he wanted me to do, which you're not going to like because I killed him. So here am I, not always what you wanted to say, not always with good turnouts. Looking ahead, next week we'll talk about David and a guy named Shimei, and see how that goes. Those are two different people. Shimei will be an interesting person. There's a lot of interaction between the two of them, David and him. And it's another person who the outcome is not good for, but not directly from David. We'll see. All right, there are some scriptures if you want to look at them for next week. Any other thoughts, since I gave absolute chance for that? Getting good at that. It's timing this out perfectly anymore. All right, appreciate you guys' rapt attention. Hope you got something out of it. And we'll talk again next week. Thanks.